Okay, so our presentation is on are the costs of medical resources reasonable for the U.S. today? I'm Max Goen.
Kevin Smith.
Christian Illinois. Sean Dowd.
Economics. Okay. So the annual cost of healthcare in other countries other than the U.S. is $3,507. The U.S. today is $9,520, and it's only rising. In 2007, it was $7,250, and in 1995, $3,750. The U.S. has a staggeringly higher cost for healthcare than anywhere else in the world. This seems weird considering we're the most advanced country in the world pharmaceutical-wise, manufacturing over half the world's drugs. However, insurance is a luxury that many simply can't afford. And that's because healthcare costs as much as it does in America. And because of that, you would think the coverage would be that much better, but in most cases, that's not true. From a poll in 2012, over 2/5 of Americans struggle to pay medical bills. The cost of healthcare is increasing and not the quality. This is due to the price of drugs, which many insurance companies are unwilling to cover.
Oh God, what did I do? So Mylan CEO Heather Bresch was
Drugs in America, similar to healthcare, cost the most as well. The reasons are complicated, but in short, patents are what makes them cost as much as they do. Patents on drugs developed by pharmaceutical companies allow them to have a monopoly on their product. These monopolies are bad for the consumer, which coincidentally is also the ones who need the drugs. It may seem like there's a simple solution, but it's more complicated than simply forcing pharmaceutical companies to lower their costs. Pharmaceuticals is a $1 trillion business and it's highly competitive. Without these high markups, many may go out of business, and they would not be able to produce the drugs that we need. In this competitive world, medical bills and high insurance rates are a major problem for Americans, and healthcare continues to rise in price to the point where many are unable to pay off these debts. And it's even worse in developing countries, where basic needs are hard to meet, much less the price of the medicine that you need.
Mylan CEO Heather Bresch was accused of raising the value of EpiPens for personal gain in a court hearing of May 2016. The price has risen by 600% since 2007, after taking advantage of a strong monopoly. Healthcare companies like CVS and Express Script drop major medications pertaining to conditions such as diabetes, cancer, asthma, insomnia, and weight loss. Healthcare companies hope families would seek out cheaper alternatives as the rising costs have risen from these strong monopolies, and then in hopes that the strong monopoly companies would lower prices to meet the competing companies. Statistics shown through a proxy filed by Mylan shows a 670% raise in her wage, as it has risen from $2 million to $18 million, and only around $50 has gone to the actual company from each EpiPen produced. That's after this 37.5% tax factor into the $600 cost. And then this affects families tremendously as healthcare companies have dropped products such as EpiPens, and then families being affected by the price increase of Mylan. As they're able to freely manipulate the market as they please because there's no other company to compete against them.
All right. Now, let's have one boy and one girl stand up. From this table. One boy and one girl. Okay. Now look at those around you. Everyone seated represents the percentage of people in America that fall below the poverty line. You can say. Let's see what America has done to solve this dilemma. One example would be Obamacare, which was created to allow those who could not afford health care to obtain it by expanding the Medicaid eligibility. However, this has impacted the U.S. negatively in a way that, one, jobs are harder to keep, two, health care costs have increased, and three, government national debt in general has just increased. Another example would be how the government spends its money. Most of the money the government spends, which is actually billions of dollars, has been wasted on, for example, advertising medicine to get doctor and patient attention and good notoriety for themselves, rather than on research and development for developing medicines that are cost effective and also towards the ones we already have. Historically, the advancements in technology as well as appeal to newer medical procedures have attributed to the disproportionate cost. Hemodialysis, coronary artery bypass procedures artery bypass, graft surgery, CT scanners, and organ transplants are among the treatments now available to patients. In addition, pharmacies are dropping hundreds of prescriptions and are no longer covering them, thus making it so drug manufacturers will not price drugs at such a high cost, and in return force customers to seek out cheaper and safer options. By doing this, however, families will have to seek out these resources from third parties at a much higher price. Doctors are faced with whom to allow these treatment to in an event that demand would exceed the resources available, and what to do if those who cannot afford it want it. They also take into consideration individual factors of the patient, such as their social worth in society and whether or not they'll be able to pay the required fees. And these dictate if they'll receive the treatment.
Rehabilitation centers, for those who don't know, are special types of treatment facilities where the staff is instructed to guide their patients towards sobriety. Rehabilitation treatment, or rehab, is recommended often for those with drug or substance abuse or addiction. And many people discuss the topic as though it's a very easy and simple solution. But what you may not know is that private rehab centers can cost anywhere between $8,000 to $120,000 per month. And not only are private rehab centers far more expensive than the public is typically told, but scientific study shows no increased success rates when compared to regular rehab centers. While discussing rehabilitation center success rates, you should know that even after one full year of of steady addiction treatment, the chances of patients remaining completely clean are only 40%. And with all of these things in consideration, why would anybody want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for year-long medical treatment that has a large chance of not even working?
In recent years, we've seen a huge increase in doctors' salaries, climbing 66% since 2008. If these wages continue to rise, the cost to hire these professionals will rise with them. The Affordable Care Act was a law instituted by the government to adjust the price of medicines so that in any case, family or otherwise, a life isn't lost to greed. The Affordable Care Act would base your insurance and medical prices off of your annual income to form a reasonable cost for all. Our group came up with some solutions for the problem we found. Government intervention in emphasizing health promotion is a good way to keep people more healthy and thus lower insurance. People with diseases and chronic illnesses generally have higher insurance. Government capping on the cost of privatized health insurance based on annual income would help keep the price from rising too high, and for those of which their annual income is too low, the government may help pay for it in a similar way to welfare. For the price of drugs, pharmaceutical companies who develop drugs would no longer make money based on sales of those drugs, but rather on the effectiveness and widespread use of those drugs. Rather than having competition for those sales, companies would be paid by only the government for the use of those drugs they produce. This would take a large pool of money, and many would argue that it would ruin the market. But this would make pharmaceutical cheaper and more evenly distributed. An implication of this is a rise in taxation, but this would be countered by the drop of cost in healthcare and the lowering cost of drugs.
your peers' individual reports that you decided to exclude from your team presentation, and why?
Excluding, we decided to exclude,
Do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah.
I will come back to you. Heyman, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
I kind of just saw that, like, with the healthcare companies dropping the different EpiPens and drugs for like weight loss, insomnia, and whatnot, and asthma. I kind of just thought creating more competition would be more effective, but then as the solutions coming from Max and Sean's side with involving the government kind of changed my political views as well.
Sean, what was the strongest counter-argument to the solution or conclusion your team identified, and why?
It was on the moral side, and it was that life isn't cheap and you have to pay to live. And I think that we, argued against that a lot, but that is a great argument in the fact that you can't just expect to live for nothing and hope that you get paid off.
Thank you. Sky, in what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
I thought this project really exercised my ability to speak directly and be less nervous with discussing my own ideas of the topic that we were on and trying to recommend any changes or different strategies, I suppose, at making our presentation. Whereas normally I would just kind of sit back and not do much. It helped me, I guess, speak up better with the group.
Max, having finished your project, what, if anything, do you consider to be a gap in your team's research that, if addressed, would make you feel more confident about your conclusion?
I suppose one of our solutions was like a government fund pool to pay pharmaceutical companies based on their drug effectiveness. I don't know exactly how much money the government has to spend on that fund pool, or even like how much taxation that would be, and whether it'd actually be effective enough for that, for the cost to go down for Americans. That'd probably be one thing.
Thank you. All right, back to you, Christian. Do you remember the question?
Yeah, we excluded a lens that kind of excluded like MRIs and just like anything that usage of like new equipment from our presentation. Felt that it wasn't really necessary.